And we continue at 2:06 in the afternoon on the John Phillips Show. Mr. Randy Wang's in New Mexico.
John, Governor Gavin Newsom was in Los Angeles today to commemorate the 6-month anniversary of the devastating wildfires that took out major parts of Malibu and Pacific Palisades and Altadena. And it wouldn't be a Gavin Newsom presser if he didn't throw out one of his favorite things, the old African proverb.
Let me end by introducing a great partner. It's about partnership. You want to go fast, you go alone. You want to go far, you go together.
Wait a second, he's not even introducing it anymore as his African proverb. That's what he usually does.
All of our partners, it is an extraordinary thing. There's an old African proverb, some of you heard me say, says if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together.
That is his favorite thing to say.
Well, that and mindful.
I wonder if he tells the African proverb to his kids all the time, too.
When he's tucking them in at night, except he doesn't do that because he's watching Fox News.
Like Al Bundy talking about the 4 touchdowns in a single game.
That is something we are mindful of.
800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. It is our pleasure to welcome our next guest to the program. He is the author of Behind Closed Doors, available online at Amazon.com. You can also get him online at ReaganandNixon.com. Former speechwriter for Presidents Reagan and Nixon, Ken Khachigian, welcome.
Hey, John, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for stopping by this afternoon.
Hey, I just had an idea. Maybe Gavin Newsom got that proverb from Karen Bass. He may have brought it back from Ghana.
Oh, yeah, at the inauguration.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes they like to do a poetry reading, so maybe they have a reading of Proverbs, too. So, Ken, the big story nationwide today is that the ICE raids from the federal government are continuing to happen, including here in the state of California, where the feds showed up to MacArthur Park earlier today, a park, as a Californian, I'm sure you're familiar with, as being a hotbed of drug activity, of organized crime, of identity theft, homelessness.
Right.
Basically, any kind of illegal activity you can think of goes on in that park exclusively. There are no slides with kids sliding down them. There are no softball games going on over there. No families are having picnics. That is basically an open-air prison that's allowed to operate by the city of Los Angeles and the state of California, and the feds are the first ones to step up and say, nah, we're not going to put up with this. The mayor showed up to the park earlier today and told ICE to go home and tried to look like a tough guy. What do you make of what the federal government is doing, and what do you make of Karen Bass's response to fight them at every turn?
Well, Karen Bass is, I saw that. She's showboating, obviously. She's taking a leaf out of Gavin Newsom's playbook. Gavin Newsom felt that if he could confront Trump on this issue, that his poll numbers would go up, and he could take the heat off of all the problems he has in California: high crime, bad schools, homelessness, and the drugs in the streets and everything else. And Bass's staff is telling her the same thing. Look, Madam Mayor, you've got one of the worst records of any mayor in Los Angeles. And look what you can do. Look what the Newsom has done. He's Mr. Loudmouth over there, and you can do the same thing. You can showboat and confront, tell the media you're going to go confront ICE over in MacArthur Park, and get a lot of tell the media and get a lot of media attention. And I pulled this up, and I saw it on Twitter and all the feeds and on Instagram, and there she is looking real tough. But it takes everyone's mind off the fact that she was in Ghana during the fires, and takes the mind off all the crime in Los Angeles and all the homelessness and all the other problems Los Angeles has. And what it does is it takes away people's attention from the real work of ICE, which is to bust into the work of the cartels, to bust into what their real job is to hunt down the criminal element. I mean, they're not looking for innocent civilians. I mean, I think they're really, John, I think they're honestly trying to parse out who the bad guys are. And there are anecdotal stories which make for good media coverage, both in the print press and in the electronic media and in the social media of the sad stories of families being pulled apart, this, that, and the other. But they aren't showing the anecdotal stories of ICE actually going in and taking some really bad people off the streets and out of the country. And what Bass is doing is really, honestly, disgusting, which is all she's doing is showboating to take attention off the horrible, horrible record that she has brought to the city of Los Angeles.
Well, none of it appears to be working, because you look at the big national polls and you look at the question specifically: should we deport all immigrants who are here illegally? According to the New York Times, 55% say yes. According to Marquette, 64% say yes. CBS News has the number at 57%. ABC News has the number at 56%. It doesn't matter what poll you look at. The American public, the same public who voted Donald Trump back into office, want illegal aliens gone. The more this issue shows up on the front page of the newspaper, the higher Trump's numbers are going to go, because the public is not moving on this subject at all.
Well, if you have to look at Bass's immediate constituencies, and she's playing to her very, very narrow local constituency and local media. And it may be narrowly working to her favor. But what's sad, John, is it doesn't do anything to make Los Angeles a better place to live. And that's what she ought to be doing. And that's what's tragic about her very, very sad tenure as mayor of Los Angeles, which she's done nothing to, as a public servant, to improve life in the environment of Los Angeles, which used to be a wonderful, great city in the past.
Why do you think President Reagan never did anything like this? Now, obviously, the numbers weren't what they are now back then, but we certainly had a lot of illegal immigration going on in the 1980s. That's right around the time where the numbers started to spike. He tried to work out a deal in Congress with Alan Simpson and others, Mazzoli, to try to come up with an amnesty. But the enforcement actions that we're seeing go on today were not something that he certainly put front and center back in the 1980s. Do you think, in retrospect, if he were alive today, he would regard that as a mistake?
Well, the big difference, John, is that he didn't have he didn't send a big signal that we're going to open the borders and say, hey, as Joe Biden did, and just let loose this big, massive flood of immigration that he did. And I think perhaps in retrospect, maybe President Reagan would have rethought what he had done. I think he had shown great sympathy to the immigrant status that had those that had been here for long periods of times, and they worked out a deal, and they did provide amnesty. I believe it was to about 2 million folks at the time, and that was in the hopes that they could stabilize a program by which you would legalize a process by which immigrants come into this country. But you have to also think through that President Reagan had a lot of other things on his mind. He was trying to resolve the Cold War at the same time. And so this was not the biggest issue on his mind back in the 1980s. So I would cut him some slack in that respect.
We're speaking with Ken Khachigian, author of Behind Closed Doors, available online at Amazon.com. Ken, they just had a primary election in New York City to determine who would be the Democratic nominee, who would be the Republican nominee in the race for New York City mayor. And on the Democratic side of the aisle, the race wasn't particularly close. And an admitted socialist was the candidate who won that election. And it seems like every day now we get new quotes from this guy from at some point in his past that are more wild and crazier than the last one that you heard. This guy is not a socialist in the mold of what you think of in terms of AOC or even Bernie Sanders. This guy believes that the government should own the means of production. And he said that pretty explicitly, including things like the government taking over the grocery stores and the healthcare industry and running both of those industries. What do you think is going to happen in New York? Do you think that the opposition to a socialist candidate, that they're going to be able to get on the same page and get behind one candidate, or maybe come up with some sort of game with the ranked choice voting to try to keep him out of that office? Or do you think New York City is going to see a socialist mayor elected?
Well, the more they put the spotlight on this fellow, the more exposure he's going to have to his lunatic ideas. The problem is that he reminds me of this fellow in The Music Man. The guy was going to come into River City and promise to sell all these to teach all these kids how to play instruments and whatnot, and then leave town. But he's the typical fast-talking guy that's he doesn't have the actual solutions to problems, but he's in a city where because you have rent control, you have a semi-socialist system when you deal with apartments and the ownership of homes there now. So rents are exorbitantly high. So he's promising free rent to people who can't afford apartments now, and he's dangling all these things in front of these young people who can't afford to live in New York. So they say, well, this sounds pretty good. We're going to have free rent, and we can have free subway rides, and now we can have free groceries. In my mind, he ought to just save everybody the trouble and give everybody a free ticket to Cuba, and they can get all this, get everything there, and save all the trouble. They can have everything there that they could get in New York. But John, it seems to me he's just right now he's the flavor of the month, but he makes Bernie Sanders and AOC look like semi-conservatives. But it's insane to think that you can have free groceries and free rent and free subway rides because somebody has to pay for all this. And if it worked in Cuba and in all these other countries and in Eastern Europe and in the socialist countries in Latin America, they wouldn't be coming to America. They wouldn't be coming to these free enterprise countries. And so it's, but I don't know if they can, I honestly don't know if they can organize around a candidate or one candidate that can consolidate to win this election. And they just might elect this idiot because they can't find one single person. And the Republicans, there's this one fellow, the Red Beret
Sliwa.
So, that they've had for years and years. But there's so few Republicans in New York City. That I can't pronounce it. Is it Sliwa? Is that how?
Sliwa. Sliwa. Sliwa.
Yeah, Sliwa. He pronounces his name, but he's always been a very strong supporter of anti-crime in the city of New York, but I just don't think he can consolidate a Republican vote. And even the Republicans that are run in New York in the past, and back in my day, John Lindsay was no real Republican. He was a real moderate Democrat. So I just don't. And Rudy Giuliani was sort of sui generis in that regard. So I don't have much hope for New York in this respect. And what's going to happen is this guy Mamdani could get elected and shove New York further down the drain. And what's going to happen is there'll be another mass exodus to Florida. And I can't see what the solution will be for New York except even worse conditions, conditions in the subways, worse conditions in terms of the rents, and you're certainly not going to have free food and free grocery stores or anything else like that.
Ken Khachigian. The book is Behind Closed Doors, available online at Amazon.com. You can also get Ken online at ReaganandNixon.com. Ken Khachigian, thanks so much for stopping by.
Thank you.
If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. That's johnnydon'tlikeshow@gmail.com. And Randy, if you've taken your summer vacation and you missed a week or two worth of shows and you want to go back and find out what you missed out on, that's easy to do.
All you got to do is search for The John Phillips Show wherever you get your podcasts. It could be the Apple Podcasts app, could be iHeart, could be Spotify. Search for The John Phillips Show, hit subscribe. You could download all the episodes. You could do a Google on the YouTube. You can get one of our apps like the KABC app or the KSFO app, and you can listen to everything that we've been talking about the last couple of weeks, including the vice mayor of Cudahy.
I want to know where all the cholos are at.
And we're also now on the airwaves in the Central Valley.
Every Saturday from 2 to 3, you can hear the Fix California Hour with John Phillips and Randy Wang on KMJ in Fresno in the Central Valley. It's AM 580, 105.9 FM, and you can stream it live at kmjnow.com.
In the meantime, what do you say we make a couple of listeners very happy?
Let's do that right now. 790 KABC welcomes X and Los Lobos at the Pacific Amphitheater at the OC Fair on August 3rd. It's all part of the Toyota Summer Concert Series. Tickets on sale now at packamp.com. But right now, caller number 9 at 1-888-795-2222 gets a pair of tickets to the show. All concert tickets include admission to the OC Fair. This all provided by the Pacific Amphitheater. Good luck dialing.
800-222-5222 is the telephone number, 1-800-222-5222. And right now it's time to reopen the California Crime Blotter.
If the cashier is dummy.
Questions?
And Randy, it can't be the Monday after 4th of July without a 4th of July themed edition of the Blotter.
There were so many fireworks-related stories in the blotter, but I could only pick one. And I had to pick one that didn't involve somebody getting killed or somebody's pets getting killed, because there was a lot of destruction in the state of California because jackasses like to make things go boom.
Bad boys and girls.
So instead, let's look at this from the law enforcement angle. KCRA3 in Sacramento rode along with Sacramento police as they tried to enforce fireworks laws on the 4th of July and the weekend. And here is what that sounded like. Here's KCRA3.
And my radio 2. We're 5 at 6, so we can start here and then we can go that way.
Spread throughout neighborhoods across the city.
Sometimes you hear the fire, but then it's actually pretty far away.
Crews from Sacramento Fire are searching for people setting off illegal fireworks.
As it gets darker, we're going to see more activity.
We rode along with Fire Chief Chris Costamagna and Fire Marshal Jason Lee.
Sounds like that going that way.
as they drove through Districts 5.
It's like Twister. They're storm chasers, except it's dumbass fireworks.
Well, imagine being the guy in charge of fighting fires in Sacramento on the 4th of July. That's got to be like being the guy in charge of DUIs on New Year's Eve.
As they drove through Districts 5 and 6, scanning the skyline and listening closely. By 8:30 Thursday night, they had found their first...
That sounds like gunshots.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like fireworks at all.
They had found their first violation and caught it on video. But they didn't stop at the house. They drove past.
I dropped a pin.
Writing down the address and how many fireworks they set off.
What, they're going to send them an itemized bill?
Here's how many fireworks you set off on the 4th of July. Here is your bill. Thank you very much and have a nice day.
If there's 3 different violations, you're talking almost $10,000.
Oh, my goodness. I'm sure that gets enforced.
If they actually did enforce it, that would certainly get their attention.
That's a fine the homeowners can expect in the next week.
Okay, so that was our first violation of the evening.
For the next 2 hours, they drove through different neighborhoods.
This area in particular is an area that we receive a lot of complaints.
Following the fireworks and trying to pinpoint exactly where they were being set off.
I think it was like that direction.
But they weren't looking alone.
Were these loud explosive fireworks or the aerial?
A team of 10 manned the city's call center.
And you said they're the Roman candle type?
Taking dozens of reports from residents and sending them directly to the crews out searching.
This feels like such a losing battle.
You're not going to catch all of them. You're going to catch a certain portion of them. But if the portion that you catch ends up talking to all of their friends about the size of the fine, then maybe it'll have an impact on it in the long term.
I don't know. I think these things are so dangerous, especially with the fact that these things can start fires and did start fires over the weekend up and down the state of California. I think fines are not nearly enough at this point. If you're blasting fireworks illegally in this state, there's got to be some jail time associated with that.
A $200 fine, I agree with you on. A $10,000 fine, that should, in theory, get their attention.
While some fireworks were easy to see in the sky, they were hard to find on the ground.
I think they're lighting a mortar.
But by about 10:30, they had found another violation.
When?
This group set up in the middle of the street.
Okay, he's lighting another one.
Setting off firework.
There's another one.
After firework.
Jackasses.
What do you do if they do it in the middle of the street? If they're doing it out of the backyard, I get it. You can catch who's doing it by finding the homeowner. But if it's in the middle of the street, who do you fine?
Well, at that point, the fine's not going to do it. At that point, you pick that person up and you put them in the back of a paddy wagon.
Okay, they're going back out.
At one point, one of the women pointed toward the chief's red fire vehicle, asking the group if it was the police.
6 shot.
Still, they continue.
So they've got a lookout. They look at the fire vehicle. They think it's a police vehicle. Does not deter the jackasses.
They just ignore the lookout.
And Lee just kept recording.
Clinton, that one is 7.
7 violations documented, totaling $28,500 in fines.
I just want to know, because you know what? That's great. $28,000. Maybe that'll learn them a lesson. But are we enforcing these fines? What happens if you don't pay the fines?
Well, and it's also going to end up in front of some Gavin-appointed judge who's going to knock it down to something ridiculously low.
The lawyer's going to argue religious expression.
Those costly consequences only emphasize the city's seriousness about the enforcement of illegal fireworks. In Sacramento, Peyton Headley, KCRA 3 News.
So just a reminder, those crews will be out again tonight and tomorrow, along with a number of drones. The city says all the money they collect from these fines will help pay for the cost of that enforcement.
So that's what was being done over the weekend to enforce fireworks in Sacramento. And I'm sure there were several other police agencies that were doing the same thing. But if anyone looked at social media over the weekend, John, what do you see? Aerial shots of nothing but explosions everywhere in Northern California and Southern California.
Well, you talk to people who are on commercial airliners on the 4th of July, and you could look out the window from the jet that you were sitting on, and all you would see are fireworks over the state of California.
We really take that law seriously, don't we?
Well, and you know what's funny, too? We know that Gavin and Mayor Bass were supposed to have a big press conference today about the rebuilding process in Pacific Palisades, but we still don't know the origins of that fire, do we?
We don't. We do not. We don't know the origins of the guy that melted the 10 freeway.
And at first, there were attorneys who were saying that it was definitely Southern California Edison, and there were videos that they had that definitively proved that it was Southern California Edison that started the fire. But then there was no official conclusion to the investigation saying that was in fact true. And then we started hearing, well, maybe it was fireworks that were set off on New Year's and they weren't properly extinguished. And those fires, when the wind started, spread yet again. And that's how the fire started. And now, I don't know if you saw this, but over the weekend, I saw people who were tweeting about the fact that they believe now that there was a homeless encampment that may have been responsible for that fire.
We know the last time that the Pacific Palisades got set on fire in 2021, it was a homeless guy, a homeless arsonist that George Gascon tried to explain away as he was probably cold.
How is it at this point we don't know how that started? And you notice they don't even give us regular updates on the status of the investigation?
They hope you forget.
Something as important as that? And let's just say, and I'm not saying that it was, but let's just say that it was the fireworks on New Year's that caused the fire. Wouldn't it be important to get that information out before the 4th of July just to let people know what kind of literal fire they're playing with?
Oh, I think the jackasses that launch these things into the sky throughout the entire summer, not just the 4th of July, they do not care that these things can cause massive wildfires. They have caused wildfires in the past. They don't care. They want to make things go boom, which is why a lot of people don't want to live in California because it's full of jackasses like that.
Fine. Then what you can do is you can use it as an excuse to up the penalties on people who are setting off illegal fireworks. If you can't use that information to modify their behavior, then you can use that information to change the punishment. But you still have to have the definitive answer as to how the fire started so you know what to crack down on. But like everything else with this state, and it doesn't matter if you're talking about the insurance crisis or whatever, why was Karen Bass in Ghana? We're going to investigate that. And it sounds real good. And then that's the last you ever hear of it. And right now it's time to reopen the California Crime Blotter.
If the cashier is dummy.
Questions?
And Randy, this edition involves yet another street takeover.
We already told you about the one that happened up in Vallejo.
It's just a constant boom, boom, boom.
Turns out there was also one in Southern California on Jefferson in Los Angeles because, well, there is every single weekend. And John, what always comes in Los Angeles right after a street takeover?
Well, it's usually a looting.
Yep. Here's KCal. Can you imagine if you live in a neighborhood where this happens every single weekend and that happens every single time you're trying to sleep?
Oh, you would be at your wit's end.
A wild street takeover in South LA ended up with looters robbing a nearby business. Happened just hours ago.
Yeah, this also happened in the Jefferson Park neighborhood near West Adams Boulevard and Western Avenue. And that's where
it's right next to where the radio station used to be.
Yeah, no kidding.
If you wonder where KABC was located for many, many years, it was on the corner of Murder and Rape.
And now people are paying Rick Caruso a fortune to live there.
Avenue, and that's where we find KCAL News reporter Rick Montanez joining us live. And Rick, can you tell us what kind of damage was left behind?
Yeah, Kalina, Chris, of course, dangerous activities out here. We have a lot of broken windows that we can see across the street is that strip mall where this was happening after the street takeover. So this was just a few hours.
You just get so amped up from people doing donuts that you need to smash windows and steal everything in sight.
It's kind of like dancing in the end zone after you score a touchdown.
Although what I think happens is the people who attend these events realize that there's complete lawlessness going on and the police are not going to shut it down. So why don't we take it up a notch?
See if we can really get their attention.
Just a few hours ago, as you mentioned, and we also saw some of the business owners out here starting to clean up a lot of the mess that was left behind. And as usual, that street takeover, as you just saw, was recorded by witnesses.
Yeah, it's not like these things are hidden. They're all over social media. The evidence is right there. You can see the cars.
Well, and frequently the people who participate in these street takeovers are the ones who post the videos online and then tag themselves.
So this happened between 3:30 and 3:45 this morning. Reports to LAPD about a takeover here at Western and Adams. Live streamed a cell phone.
By the way, for all the people that say it's mostly teenagers that go to these events, what are teenagers doing out at 3 in the morning on a Saturday?
Yeah, no kidding. Parents, get control of your kids.
Live streamed.
I think you meant to say parent.
That's true. Guardian, get control of your kids.
Foster mom.
Live streamed a cell phone video shows a packed intersection as drivers perform dangerous stunts in the street. Driver after driver taking their turns doing donuts and burnouts.
This is yet another story that is making me look at my Southwest app and thinking about canceling that return ticket.
At some point, you are going to do that.
I'm going to have to eat about 20,000 miles, but it'll be worth it. Because I can't stand this anymore. Other places aren't like this. The rest of the country doesn't have this problem.
You also see in the video other drivers stuck at the blocked off intersection waiting for things to clear out. We have another clip here to show you of the damage here at the strip mall. It wasn't more than a few minutes later that reports of looting began coming into LAPD. This morning.
Still, you don't want to break this up?
No, because it's just kids having fun.
This morning, police say one business in the strip mall was burglarized, but we can see damage at some of the other stores you see in this video as well. 4 businesses here, a market, a nail salon, a beauty supply shop, and a restaurant. And it appears several of them, if not all of them, have some sort of damage. The plaza is surrounded by a security gate, but it's not clear this morning whether that gate was closed and or even locked when all of this happened overnight. And I can tell you that LAPD at this point has not given us a number of how many cars or people they estimate to be out here. But based on that video, it looks like there were dozens of cars and dozens, if not more, people who were taking part or watching this happen. And LAPD tells us no arrests made this morning. Back to you guys.
Whenever something like this happens in Los Angeles, no arrests were made is always the last line of the story.
We tolerate complete lawlessness in the city on a constant basis. These happen almost every night in some neighborhoods.
Imagine if your business was in that shopping center and you show up on Monday morning and your windows are broken, your store is damaged, things are stolen, and then you have tire marks all through the parking lot and all through the street that's right in front of your business. How do you convince your customer base that it's safe to shop there? When the evidence is like crystal clear on that? The answer is you don't. And eventually you go under. And that's what we're seeing happening in these neighborhoods. The assumption is if you crack down on it, you're going to punish the kids in the neighborhood, and that's going to be bad for the neighborhood. However, that's not true. If you crack down on it, you're going to protect the businesses in the neighborhood. And if you run all those businesses out of the neighborhood, guess what? If you think that neighborhood is bad now, you wait and see what those neighborhoods look like when they don't have anyone willing to invest their money or their time in local businesses. Then it really circles the drain. All right, that's going to do it for us today, but we'll be back tomorrow at noon for another edition of The John Phillips Show. Hope everyone enjoyed their July 4th weekend, but the week has started, and we're all back to work, and it's time to fix the problems facing the state of California and beyond.